everyone! As I'm filming this, today is December 1st, so it's officially appropriate for me to make Christmas content. In my last video, which was about like 2 months ago I think, someone left a comment saying that my cat wanted to take over the channel, and you know what? Why shouldn't he? I mean, we're all artists in this family, and that includes the cat. And if he wants to make art with me, then he should be allowed to. So, all jokes aside, that reminded me of the challenge where artists would let their pets pick their art supplies and they would make an art piece from that. So I'm a little bit late to this, like a few years late, but I thought that it would be fun to let my cat Taro pick my art supplies since he wants to be so involved with my art. So the way I'll do this is that we will have 4 rounds with 4 options each. So the first round will be paper, and then we'll have the main supply, and then the theme of the art piece, and then a 4th round for a bonus art supply. So when choosing my options, I'll try to go for a good balance of good and bad art supplies, because I feel like the goal of this challenge is for your pet to set you up for failure. So those are basically the rules. We have printer paper, pastel paper, this random unknown paper, and then my usual go-to, the sketchbook. I put treats down on the floor. Let's welcome Taro in and see which one he picks. Oh, well, he made his choice. So our first option is alcohol markers, water-based markers. Then we have crayons. We have a watercolor palette, which is specifically the Decadent Pies one. All right, now Taro, which one are you going to choose? Hmm? Oh no! Well, looks like Taro has picked the crayons for me to use. We have Christmas tree, table spread, gingerbread house, snowman sona. All right, Taro, time to pick. Good boy. I really thought he was gonna go for this one again. Our first option is glitter glue, silver marker, Winsor & Newton gold ink, and finally we have these metallic washi tapes. So now Taro can choose which of these options he wants me to use. Alright, which one are you picking? Alright. Thanks for your services, sir. So the paper that Taro has picked is this one. So it's a pretty big sheet, bigger than what I'm used to working on. So as you can tell, it has a little bit of a texture because this is made for oil pastel or chalk pastel, and it's not completely white. It has a little bit of a tannish tint to it, so that should be interesting. Now, the medium that Taro picked is crayons. I have these Crayola crayons, but they're not the greatest, at least not in my opinion. They don't have a lot of pigment. They don't really blend that well. They don't really layer on top of each other. That will be interesting. And here you can see I have a lot more. I even have some metallic ones, which I allow myself to use because I think those will be fun. And I'll try to use more Christmas themed colors. And then the theme that Taro has chosen for me is gingerbread house. I've done gingerbread house illustrations before, so this is pretty much the only theme that was in my comfort zone already, but I'll try to be a little bit more creative because that's not much of a challenge. Finally, the bonus supply is the Winsor & Newton gold metallic bronze ink. This is a really fun supply. I've used it a ton in the past, but not so much anymore. I hope it's still good. It looks pretty stiff, like usually it moves more than that. Those are golden pigments inside of an alcohol base, I think. It can be a little bit difficult to get the ink to be like opaque, so you sometimes have to put multiple coats. Either that or you must scrape the pigment out of the bottle. But other than that, it's a really good golden ink. Honestly, I'm not super mad about this selection. I would say like the only thing that really bothers me is the crayons because I don't like them. But I think that this paper and the crayons might work well together, so maybe that's gonna play in my favor. I'm also kind of scared of how this paper is gonna hold this ink because it's pretty wet, and that might make the paper buckle a little bit, so I'm gonna have to be careful and not put too much on the paper. Probably gonna have to use it sparsely. So yeah, with that being said, I'll start working on my sketch. So let's get into the sketching part. So yes, I am using pencil to sketch out this illustration. I'm just right now blocking in some of the bigger shapes to help me with composition. I cut out a lot of footage during this part because I was having a hard time figuring out where I wanted to place the elements. So the concept that I ended up with is a little house party where two mice are going and they're carrying little gifts for the host. So yeah, this sketch is painfully messy. My problematic trait is that when I draw for myself, I draw very, very messy, and it's only during the line art phase that everything becomes like tighter, which is kind of ironic because in animation I was taught to draw a very solid sketch so that your line art comes out really solid. So I've kind of developed that confidence where my sketching is really just as an indication of where things go. The problem here, and you'll see that later when I start using the actual crayons, is that you can't really do line art with crayons. The nib is just too fat. And as I was drawing this, I was adding more and more small details and trying to like reassure myself that I would be able to keep all that detail. And here I'm just swatching some browns. Of course, the gingerbread house would be brown. I knew it would be a color that I would use a lot of, so I wanted to pick a nice brown that I was happy with. And then I tested a few more colors that I knew I would use a lot throughout the piece, like red, green, blue for the sky, and I set them aside so that they would be easy to pick up. Because as you can see, I have so many colors, and sometimes I would get lost and just pick up the wrong color and realize that it was the wrong color once it's on the paper. That happens to me all the time, so I tried to be a little bit more organized for this piece. So I just quickly lightened up the sketch so that the pencil wouldn't show through too much under the crayons. And here we are starting to lay down the first base colors. Started with the gingerbread house. Let's talk about crayons, shall we? First of all, this paper, I thought it would work out well with crayons because it's a paper made for what I personally would call the adult crayons. To me, that's what oil pastels and chalk pastels are. But actually, I don't think it was working in my favor. I mean, maybe there's something I'm missing about the technicalities of working with crayons, but the application was not smooth at all. I mean, you can see there are so many gaps in the coloring. It's even worse on darker colors, obviously, like the beige on the mice is fine because it's light, so there's not a lot of contrast between the color of the paper and the color of the crayon. But the sky, as you'll see a little bit later, is just so bad. You can see every stroke, and there are lots of gaps. And maybe the texture could be fun, but to me, it's just giving primary school coloring book kind of thing. And when I was swatching these crayons earlier in my sketchbook, on that paper, it came out so much smoother. I didn't have to push as hard. But if I wanted the color to come out as dark as I wanted, I would have to press so hard, which basically ruins any opportunity to then go back and layer a darker color on top. So the way I ended up doing the shading is that I had to pick a crayon that was super, super dark, and Lord knows there wasn't a lot of options, especially since I need one darker version of each color that I used. So for example, to shade green, I need a darker green. If I was shading brown, I'd need a darker brown. So on the house, the brown was already one of the darkest colors that I had, and I pushed quite hard. So I would have to pick a brown that was even darker, and then I would have to push super hard. And yes, I broke almost all the crayons I used on this piece. To be fair, that is on me. I mean, that's not a medium that I usually go for. So I probably could have started with a lighter layer of every color and then go in to darken it up, but it was just, it already took so long, and I'm just so used to doing one coat of a color and then one coat of a shadow and be done with it, you know? I feel like I should have approached this challenge in a bit of a different way. I kind of went into it just how I would normally make an illustration. And then as I was drawing and starting to panic about the amount of details I would have to color in, I had the idea to make a like stained glass kind of thing. And I feel like that concept, maybe a little bit more abstract, would have worked really well for this medium, especially since I had the golden ink, which I thought of using as line art. I don't know if any of that made sense, but I feel like something like that would have probably worked a lot better. But of course, I went for my default. That's just what's comfortable for me, drawing tiny little creatures and lots of details and doing line art. I was trying to go for a lineless style because, like I said, the line art was so difficult to do. That's just so out of my comfort zone. So now we're coloring in the sky. This took a long time to do, as you can probably imagine, so I didn't bother filming all of it. And that wasn't in the sketch, but I drew some little stars that I just left white and colored around so that I would end up with this nice little starry night sky. Just adds a little bit more interest. Plus, it really just drives home the idea that it's Christmas night. I went with a blue crayon around the mice because I wanted them to have kind of a glow to them. And honestly, I'm quite happy with how it turned out. There are things I like about this illustration and there are things I don't like, but I don't fully hate it. I would love to maybe go back to this concept, redo it digitally, or trace it and color it in with another medium that I'm more comfortable with. The lighting is also all over the place. If there's one thing I'm not good at, it's shading things in, especially since I'm not even sure where this takes place. I mean, it's a gingerbread house, so you would think it's inside, but they're in the snow and there's the night sky, so it's most likely a fantasy world where the houses for these little creatures are made out of dessert. I ended up rendering this piece a lot more than I thought I would. I think it's just the limitations of the materials I was using. I was really struggling with contrast throughout this whole piece, so I went back in a lot of places. There were even times where I literally just scraped off the crayon and went back on top of it. It worked quite well in some places, but there are still places that are really messy and muddy. Taro insisted on inspecting the work that was being done because he was the commissioner for this one after all. So for the line art, I did my best, honestly. I don't really know what else to tell you. I tried picking a crayon that would be dark enough, but that would still fit the color scheme. I didn't want to go with a straight black because that would be way too harsh. And I'm quite satisfied actually with the color I picked. I do love this soft taupe-ish kind of color. I think it's really pretty. But of course, the big challenge with that was how big the nib is and trying to draw with whatever the sharpest edge of the crayon became with each stroke. And so after doing the line art on the piece, I went in with the ink. So I didn't explain this part of the concept during the sketching phase, but as you can see, the mice are carrying golden goods. So the mouse on the left is carrying a golden coin, and the mouse on the right is carrying a little spool of golden thread. It's not symbolics for anything. I was just thinking, what is golden? And I knew I wanted to include a coin. And I also wanted to include a spool of thread because I feel like that's often associated with mice. Golden thread, that would make a good gift. I would love to receive golden thread if I was a mouse. Or no, I don't need to be a mouse. I would enjoy golden thread, even as an adult human woman. And as I expected in the beginning, I didn't manage to get the ink super opaque on a first go, so I had to do multiple coats. I also added a few golden details here and there on the house. I don't think it necessarily adds anything, but I didn't want the gold to just be located in one spot, so I was really debating this whole time whether I should paint the little stepping stones with the gold. Let me know, should I have done that? I mean, it made more sense to me that they would be made out of cookie, just like the house. I think golden ones would have been cute too. And then once I finished applying all the golden ink, I went back in to do some line art, just to separate everything a little bit more. I didn't have a color that was dark enough to contrast with the gold, so I had to resort to using this darker purple. I'm not sure that I like the way it looks. I also added some white crayon to add a little bit of shine on the coin and the thread. So as you can see on the coin, when light shines on it, it's much darker where there's the highlight compared to the rest of the coin. So that doesn't make any sense. But when the piece is in the shadows, then you can see the white highlight a little bit better. So it works, but also not really. So this is how the final piece turned out. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you will subscribe to see more content from me. Let me know if you agree that Taro did a terrible job at choosing my art supplies for this video. And until next time, bye stinkies!